My wife cheated on me. When she drank 4 bottles of and fell asleep on the couch, I saw a message on her smartwatch from my best friend he wanted. So last night, my spouse of 12 years, Emily, decided to have a relaxing evening. After dinner, she went to the library to watch her programs while I alternated between watching the Lakers game and doing some odd jobs I had planned. Next thing I know, she's got the wine out and has downed 4 bottles. Around midnight, I went to check on her and found her passed out on the couch. I was about to scoop her up when her smartwatch buzzed and a message popped up on the screen. It said something like, "Haha, I can't do that. My husband would go ballistic." I wondered what that was all about, so I pressed on it, and it was a conversation between Emily and a buddy of mine, Dave. Now, I wouldn't say this guy is a close friend, but he's someone I've played basketball with for years, had drinks with, and known since we were teenagers. We used to call him Spectator because during fights as teens, he'd always be the guy holding everyone's jackets. So, as I said, I pressed on the conversation while this thing was still attached to her wrist and scrolled to the top. As far as I could tell, he contacted her first unless she deleted something. There was lots of flirting and winking going on, but nothing that you could outright call cheating. Then I get to last night, and when she's drunk, she starts openly begging him for sex. I couldn't believe my eyes. I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember the exact words, but she was saying stuff like how much she had always wanted him, how no one would ever find out if he did want to do something, and the last one that killed me, that she was great at keeping secrets. I tried to scroll on her watch but couldn't find any other messages, and I don't know her phone passcode. I put her to bed and just sat in the community center in shock until I fell asleep. Then I got up for work around 7:00 a.m. When I went to get in my work van, I just slumped down on the wheel and realized I couldn't face it. So I went back in the shopping mall, grabbed a half-drunk bottle of whiskey, filled it to the top with Coke, and went on a walk down the railway line. We live beside a lot of woodland and a disused railway line that goes for miles, and I've walked about a third of the length of it. I'm sitting under a railway bridge like a troll right now, just seething at the whole thing. You'd probably think there's a fire from a mile away due to the steam coming out of my ears. So what do? I don't want to speak to her. I can't even bear to look at her after reading that. It was like a dagger through my heart. I just feel like every bit of love I had for her has evaporated into thin air after reading her begging like that. Gross. I honestly want to ghost her, man. If I could, I would never speak to her again. The whole great at keeping secrets was the thing that really got me. Like, who even are you? It reeks, but it's a case of how far down the rabbit hole I want to go. I don't care if I'm being honest. I'm just done. I've never felt so betrayed and disgusted in all my life. The thing is, I've invested so much in her, not just as a partner, but as a person. I loved her so much and thought her personality, and by extension, my personality, reflected that of good people. To realize she's a backstabbing snake makes me feel like a snake. I feel like a worse person than I was yesterday. The only way I can describe it is like someone you looked up to and took advice and life lessons from suddenly turns out to be a creep. Your entire perception of yourself and who you are would be shattered because you've taken on board what they've said and invested time into a creep. God, I'm rambling nonsense. I apologize. I'm fortunate in that our apartment is owned by my parents, who 15 years ago moved to a retirement village, and we moved in. The apartment will be bequeathed to me when they pass away, but I don't and hopefully won't own it for a long time. They couldn't be bothered with the upkeep and all the problems and wanted to see out their final days in peace. So when we do divorce, my soon-to-be ex won't be getting her hands on it. So what do I do then? I'm honestly thinking of just not saying a word and throwing her right out. Also, while walking here, it crossed my mind to get my mate who's a locksmith to quietly change the locks today. I could feed her any old garbage about something being broken with the doors. She won't care what's going on anyway as long as I'm around. Then after he's done, lock the front door and tell her to come out and look at something in the backyard. When she comes out, just run back in and lock the door behind me. That sounds childish as hell, doesn't it? But seriously, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm staring at a bottle right now and my life feels like it has been ripped apart at the seams. As for that prick Dave, there's no doubt he was up to something here. There's also no doubt I wouldn't have caught wind of this at all. So I'll be seeing him very soon. Never mind holding jackets, he'll be holding his face. Went to a friend's house to calm down, threw the whiskey away. She's been texting me, asking where I am since my work van is still in the driveway. I texted her saying there's a problem with the engine, so I got a lift into work. I'll make my move tonight. Update thank you to everyone who reached out to me after my first post. It was really appreciated. So yesterday, after I had written the post and was in a complete mess, 2 dog walkers came over to check on me as I was obviously concerning them. I told them everything. They listened, and the first thing one of them said to me was, "Son, the worst thing you can do right now is drink. It'll cause carnage." I have to thank her for that because I was on the highway to hell at that point. I threw the whiskey away, got in touch with a friend, and he said I could come to his place for a while to calm down. He was at work but told me where the spare key was. We live in a small town of around 17,000 people, and he wasn't too far away. So once I got there, I sat on his couch just trying to calm down. Throughout the morning, I was getting multiple texts and phone calls from Emily, asking where I was and what the hell was up, as my work van was still sitting in the driveway, and I was nowhere to be seen. I texted her back, telling her there was a problem with the engine, so I got a lift into work, which she seemed to buy as she just texted back saying okay. When my friend got back from work at about 8:00 p.m., I told him everything that had happened and asked his opinion. I also told him not to tell anyone about Dave, as that might get back to Emily, which I didn't want at this point. I would deal with him later. By that, I mean he'll expose what a little rat he is. Knocking him out doesn't help me at all right now. As an aside to the people saying he did nothing wrong, he messaged my wife first. He was being extremely flirty. What the hell is he even playing at messaging my wife in the first place? He only knows her in passing from afar. Look, I've got no problem with 2 adults conversing with each other, but they hardly knew each other, and it was flirty from the start as far as I could tell. I think they've seen each other while out and about, and it's gotten flirty then. So my friend convinced me to try and keep a low profile and see what I could dig up. But at the same time, speak to a lawyer and get the ball rolling in terms of finding out my options, which I have done today. He took me home around 9 p.m., and I was honestly dead on my feet by that point. I think the adrenaline pumping the entire day and then suddenly stopping knocks it right out of you. So I was extremely tired when I got back to the shelter. The second I walked through the door, I knew something was up as Emily was on me right away, asking me all sorts of questions about work. I asked her why she even cared, and she said that I'd left my big flask in my lunch bag in the front passenger seat and something's been up today. She could feel it. I was about to lie, but I was just too tired. I couldn't be bothered putting any sort of charade up, so I just said, "Yeah, there is something up. Last night when I was putting your drunken ass to bed, a message came up on your smartwatch, which I read and all the other ones, and that you were a disgusting cheat that I wanted nothing more to do with." Her demeanor went from an arms-crossed person in power to a scared little girl within about a second. Good at keeping secrets, huh? Begging that little rat for sex, huh? Yep, read it all. She started sobbing, and I just walked away and went upstairs into the shower. When I got out, she was sitting on the top stair, crying still, and the excuses started right away: how she was drunk, vulnerable, had never done anything like that before, how he had messaged her first, and it didn't mean anything. She was never going to go through with it. Pretty much everything that everyone on here was saying she would say, like she had the playbook out. The only thing she didn't do was try to blame me. She probably knew I would have thrown her right out the door if she had tried that. I told her that I wanted a divorce and her out of the shelter within a month. Also told her that she was moving to the spare room. I've been pretty much ignoring her ever since, just scowling at her and shaking my head when she starts waffling nonsense. I don't want to hear it. She slept in the spare room last night, and I haven't spoken to or texted with her at all today. If I'm lucky, maybe she'll be gone when I get back from work. But my luck's not that good, I suppose. On getting her out, though, I was telling my parents what was happening today, and my mother was adamant I wasn't throwing her out on the streets. Her and my mother are close and always have been. We'd have been together 19 years in December. My mother was saying she made a mistake and that we should sort it out like adults, that we've been through too much together and that she didn't actually do anything, it was just words. She completely took her side over mine. I couldn't believe it. Could this screw me here? Do I have no right to ask her to leave if my mother is against it? It's literally going to be my shelter when my parents pass, and I did nothing wrong, so I'm not leaving. It's probably going to turn into War of the Roses Part 2. I managed to get myself an appointment with a divorce lawyer for next week, so I'll be going to that to discuss my options. Until then, I'm just going to ignore my soon-to-be ex-wife, I guess. I know she's probably not going to admit anything else now. I'll never know if she was a really good liar or if she was just talking to him to get him on her side for an affair. Anyway, sorry about the delay in the update. Just got the chance to write it now as I'm finishing work. Update, it's now been 35 days since I found out Emily was trying to cheat on me with Dave, and the situation has become hellish. I gave her a month to get out, and she's been sleeping in the spare room, but it's clear now she doesn't have any intention of leaving after she got in my mother's ear. She doesn't have anywhere to go anyway, but that's not my problem. I've seen my divorce lawyer multiple times, and I'm now in the process of drawing up a divorce petition and having her served with divorce papers. I've also opened my own bank account and taken 50 of the balance from our shared account. The atmosphere around the shelter has been weird, to say the least. The living room has turned into a no-man's land where no one frequents as we both spend the majority of our time in our rooms. I've also intentionally been working late a lot so I don't have to interact with her much. I had been completely ignoring her, but after reading about the 180, I've started implementing that and been civil, if a little cold, towards her. I'm so glad I did this as I was beginning to feel like a monster refusing to acknowledge her existence. It was not the right way to behave, and I ended up feeling like the one who had wronged her rather than the other way around. The only time I broke from the 180 was when I walked into the bathroom last week and she was sitting on the floor by the bath, crying. I helped her up and instinctively gave her a hug, though it was more of a there type hug than one with much love attached to it. The sad thing is that I'm so suspicious of her now that I wouldn't put it past her to be waiting on me coming in so she could put on a performance. The thing is, that probably isn't even true, but this is the sort of thing that's going through my head in this environment. It's just toxic. She's been crowing about how she'll do anything and everything to save this marriage, anything to prove to me that it was just a silly mistake. So I brought up a lie detector test. I don't plan on ever getting one done. I wouldn't even know where to start. I just wanted to gauge her reaction. She was all for it. Well, until a few hours later when she came to me, tablet in hand, going on about how inaccurate they are and that anxiety and nervousness can throw up false readings, and with her anxiety disorder and all. I just laughed. It wasn't even a normal chuckle either. It started as a bit of a cackle and ended in a childish giggle. It appears she would do everything to save this marriage. Well, everything except take a lie detector test, that is. It doesn't even matter anyway. I meant what I said in my original post. Every morsel of love I had for her dissipated into the atmosphere after I read her say those horrible things. I don't see her as my true love anymore, the person I could tell anything to and would trust with my life. I just see trash that needs to be taken out before it stinks the place up. Dave has been the talk of the town since I exposed him to our friend group a few weeks back. It's safe to say he has no friends left among us and has been completely ostracized. I tried calling him a few times, but he refused to answer and then blocked my number. That little rat. I hope it was worth it. I've spoken to my mother multiple times about this, and during a heated argument, I asked her why she was taking Emily's side. Was there something she wasn't telling me here? What was she expecting us to live like roommates? Go on like nothing happened? It's ridiculous. She said she has always seen Emily as the daughter she never had but always wanted. My mother had a stillborn daughter before I was born, and it has haunted her, so she latched onto Emily and has done so since we got together. As I said previously, they have a close bond. The fact that Emily doesn't have any family and only a few friends who have their own busy lives and families means if I threw her out, she would be all alone, and my mom thinks that's unacceptable, especially during a pandemic. She tried to get me to come to a compromise, saying that in 5 or 6 months we can look at it again and see where we are mentally, and is pushing me to try couples counseling before I throw in the towel. I'm not doing that. The thought of being in the same shelter as Emily over Christmas makes me feel ill. She'll want to do it right as she does every year, and it'll be a complete show. My dad, God love him, has never been much of a talker, never up nor down, just always there. He's a quiet, proud, but timid man, and my mother's word has always been the one that matters in our shelter. People on here have been telling me that I'm selfish and spoiled because it's not my shelter, and I have no right to make demands, but it's now a case of my wife or me for my parents. If worst comes to worst, then I'm ready to walk out the door and never come back. This shelter, I have to be able to look at myself in the mirror with some semblance of self-respect, and someone has to keep their word in this debacle. If I do leave, my friend has said I can stay with him for a few weeks or so until I get myself sorted. If I do walk out that door, though, I'm done with my parents. I'll never speak to them again in my life. They'll probably see it as me giving up on them, me walking away without trying to at least have a go at fixing things first. I see it as them choosing someone who broke my heart over me. Like, what will be the logistics of this once I'm gone? Just her staying there herself, my mother and father looking after a backstabber while their flesh and blood goes off alone. A little more info on the shelter my parents let us move in a year after our wedding. It was an apparent belated wedding gift, although that was just the chatter from them at the time. They were always planning on moving out and moving us in. I've spent tens of thousands on it over the years, but that's neither here nor there. I have fantasies of leaving this all behind, going somewhere new and starting again, but I don't have anywhere else to go. I've lived in this town my entire life. It's all I know. Am I being too harsh here? I'm literally ready to cut my parents out of my life, but I feel so torn. Why am I the one who has to lose everything and everyone? I've tried to be good, and I always thought you make your own luck, and that good things happen to good people. Maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. Maybe I deserve all I get. Well, since this morning, I no longer call that shelter home. I saw on the calendar that Emily had a hospital appointment with her ophthalmologist, so knowing she would be gone for a few hours, I took that as an opportunity to get my stuff together and move out, which I have. After getting my things moved and sorted, I just put the shelter keys on the kitchen table along with the divorce papers I received from the lawyer last week and was on my way. I've blocked both Emily's and my mother's numbers, and any communication I have with Emily going forward will be done through my lawyer. In terms of my living situation, I'm staying with a friend for a week or two, but hopefully, I should be in my own rented place before Christmas. I haven't spoken to my parents in a few weeks. The last time we spoke was via text, and I tried to tell my mother in explicit detail the things Emily was saying during her texts to Dave, why it hurt me so much, and why I didn't think it was her first time doing it with the whole "I'm good at keeping secrets" comment, and thus could never trust her again. My mother texted back saying she couldn't speak to me when I was like this, and she would let me cool off. She tried to call me a few days ago, and I just ignored her call. And as I said earlier, since today I have blocked her number. I feel so let down by my parents, and at this point it almost feels worse than the original betrayal from Emily. The way I'm feeling right now, I don't think I'll ever speak to them again. I think in times of strife, you look to your family to be strong for you, to be a rock and give you, the wronged one, support. My parents have been weak. They've made me feel like the one in the wrong, like I'm overreacting, and it's me that's ripping this family apart. Well, it's not. I didn't ask them to move mountains for me, just move my cheating wife out of the shelter, and they made their choice. My father also had the chance to put his foot down for once in his life and stand up for me, but he didn't. You make your choices, and you live with them, I guess. Reading some of the comments on here from my previous posts, people have been saying things like I threw in the towel so easily, I was looking for a way out, and didn't love Emily because I didn't try hard enough to save things. But that's not true. I loved Emily more than anyone on this earth, and I was broken when I discovered what she was doing. I think we all have boundaries, and once those boundaries have been crossed, things change irrevocably. When I read those horrible texts, something changed inside of me. I fell out of love with her, like being snapped out of a spell in the movies. Anything tried after that is just delaying the inevitable. I have to say that I'm interested in the whole dynamic of their relationship now that I'm gone. Are my parents going to continue supporting her, knowing that it has finished their relationship with their son? As for me, I'd loved to travel. Emily hated flying, so most of our holidays had been to Southern California, like San Diego and Santa Barbara. So it would be great to travel abroad again. The last time I was abroad was when I was 22 for a friend's holiday in Spain, so 14 years ago. I'd love to see a bit of Europe, so once this pandemic calms down, I've definitely got my sights on Italy. Update, it's been over 9 months since I first posted here, and I honestly thought that was it for me as I didn't need any more advice. I had made my decisions and done what I said I would, but I got a phone call this morning that has dragged me back into the mire. I walked away from my shelter that was to be left to me by my parents and severed my relationship with them as they took my wife's side over mine while I wanted her out of the shelter and my life. I had no interest in reconciling. My mother tried to keep us together and thought she was seeing us through troubled waters. But I left the shelter and haven't spoken to them since, until this morning. I have moved 30 miles away, changed my phone number, and I'm still in the process of divorcing Emily. She has completely ignored all the requests from my divorce lawyer to cooperate, which has hindered things. We're now in the process of putting in an application for deemed service, so she will be served officially by the courts. And if she continues to ignore, then I can proceed with a divorce without her input. Well, this morning while at work, I got a phone call from my friend telling me that my dad was trying to get in touch as my mother is not well, and would it be okay if he gave him my number? I said okay, and my dad phoned to tell me Mom is in the hospital. She's stable, but not great. Obviously, I was shocked as I've not heard my dad's voice for so long. It was also the most emotional I've ever heard him. He told me my mom really wants to see me, so would I meet him at the hospital tonight and go in and see her with him? I said okay, and have arranged to meet him outside the hospital. I ended up going home from work as I couldn't concentrate, and I'm climbing the walls here, wondering if I've made the right decision, wondering if I'm about to get dragged back into this show that I walked away from. I've never felt so nervous in my life, and the lack of control I have over the situation has sent my mind spiraling in lots of different directions. I feel like I'm walking into a burning building blindfolded with no idea where the exits are. Why does she want to speak to me now? Has she had a change of heart? Unless she's also had a personality transplant while in there, I find that unlikely. Will Emily be there? I have no interest in ever seeing her again. I'm still angry about what transpired with them and the way they took my cheating wife's side over mine. I've been going back and forth in my head about going at all, but I will go. I was also thinking about maybe seeing if she wanted to speak over the phone instead, but I'm not sure if she would do that, or even if she's well enough. I feel like the bad guy here, and that I might have caused this by walking away. How would you handle this? Any advice would be appreciated. Update. Sorry about the late update. I've spent the last few days trying to digest what happened and how I feel. So I did end up going to the hospital on Wednesday night after much toing and froing. I was genuinely about to back out at the last minute as I felt my resolve crashing, but I needed some closure and knew that I wouldn't forgive myself if I didn't go and something happened. When I drove into the hospital parking lot, I had this surreal feeling of extreme paranoia and was half expecting Emily to jump out from behind a bush or something. I met my dad at the entrance, and it was pretty awkward as he tried to hug me, and I said no. I then said if Emily is here in any way, shape, or form, then I am turning around and leaving. He assured me she wasn't, and we made our way to the ward where Mom was. When I saw my mother, I got the fright of my life as she looked like she had been in the wars. Never have I seen her look so frail. She's got an extreme black eye and also a lot of bruising and purple yellowness down one side of her face. She took a serious fall, broke 2 ribs, shattered her elbow, and banged one side of her head face on the ground. So elbow, ribs, then head in that order. She looked zombified but perked up when she saw me. She told me how much she's missed me and that she wasn't sure she'd ever see me again. I told her if she had really wanted to get a hold of me, she could have done it. We spoke for a bit about what exactly had happened, how she was down for a few hours before my dad found her, and that she was determined to get back to normal and mend bridges with me. I brought up Emily and that I had been pushing for a divorce, but she was either ignoring the letters or wasn't getting them, so I asked if she's still in the shelter. Mom admitted she was, and Dad started to look uncomfortable. I just looked away in disgust. Mom started saying how lost Emily is without me and that she's not in a good way. I knew then that nothing will change. She's not had an epiphany or seen things from a new perspective. She just wants the status quo back. She said that the shelter is my home and always will be. But I told her I don't want it. It means nothing to me anymore, and all it holds are bad memories. I stayed for under an hour, all in all. When I left, I said if I want to get in contact, I will, but don't be waiting by the phone for me to call, as you might be waiting a while. When Dad walked me out, he asked if I would keep in touch with him, and I said I would. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. Time will tell. When I got home, my emotions were a bit all over the place, from sadness to anger, but I'm glad I went. Couldn't help but think about Emily as well and what she once meant to me. It'll never not hurt when I think about everything that's happened in the last 9 months. It honestly doesn't feel real. The speed at which everything fell apart was just spellbinding. I know life comes at you fast, especially when you're not paying attention, and I wasn't paying attention. It was just sheer luck I found out about her trying to cheat on me. Cosmic coincidence, nothing more. I never saw the signs or put everything together. I just saw something on her watch, and it tore my life apart. I know now that it wasn't the only time. I know it in my heart. I see what she is and feel no love for her, only contempt. I feel she stole the best years of my life. When I think about all the good times, they're just soured. It feels like someone else's life, not mine. My friend was saying I should see a therapist or something to try and let everything out, or else this will fundamentally change who I am and the way I build relationships going forward. That's something I'm going to do, I think, as I do feel a bit broken inside. The last 9+ months have been the worst of my life, but I'd rather they happened than been kept in the dark. I'm just sad that it happened the way it did, but you can't choose the way someone screws you over, I suppose. You just have to learn from it. I remember reading about loyalty being the most undervalued character trait, and I see that now. Probably because you don't really know if someone is truly loyal to you until, well, they're not. It's not something you deal with every day, but now more than ever, I know how important a trait it is. Update. Firstly, I'm now in the home stretch in terms of divorce from Emily. She has signed the divorce papers, and now all that's left are the formalities. She sent me a message via my dad where she said she's sorry for not letting me move on, that she thought she could save things, but now she knows she can't, and she has to move on for her own well-being. I thank her for seeing sense. She doesn't want anything in the divorce and said she's going to move out of the shelter when she can get on her feet, which I'm okay with.